welcome to the Rizk Assessment. I'm your host, Sharif Rizk. As I'm sure many of you have heard, there are a lot of protests being planned in Egypt and across the world right now, in what is being called the Rebel Campaign. The Rebel Campaign started a few months ago when a few citizens in Egypt got really fed up with Morsi's rule and the Muslim Brotherhood rule in Egypt as well. The goal was to reach 15 million signatures on a petition that essentially withdraws the people's confidence from Morsi and his government. Within a month, this petition reached 7 million signatures. And on June 19, 2013, the petition reached its goal of 15 million signatures. A lot of people are noting that this is a very significant achievement for the Egyptian revolution. And quite frankly, it's not only an achievement for the Egyptian revolution, but it's especially an achievement for the liberal opposition. The liberal opposition in Egypt, which, as some of you may know, is made up of many different parties and many different ideologies, came together to organize this very important petition, this very important initiative, to put together an opposition, to put together a formative stance against Morsi's rule and the Brotherhood's rule and their stranglehold on Egypt and its institutions. With 15 million signatures in this petition, it could very well turn the tide in future elections. In order to examine the strength of this tide, we decided to look back at a year ago on June 24th, 2012, when the presidential elections were held that launched Morsi and the Brotherhood into the presidency. In the 2012 presidential vote, there were two rounds that took place in order to vote for a president. In the first round, there were several candidates, certainly more than two, and in that round, there were 43.4% of eligible voters, which were approximately 50 million voters. So that's 21.7 million voters went out to vote in the first round of Egyptian elections. The first of its kind since Mubarak stepped down, the first essentially free elections, although there were many doubts about the freedom or the true authenticity of those elections. There were, of course, a lot of allegations of fraud. There were a lot of allegations of corruption among the judges who were monitoring the votes. So 21.7 million voters who went out to vote in the first round. If you take into account the 15 million voters or 15 million signatures who signed the Rebel Campaign petition, that's quite a significant number. And that 15 million 15 million petition is going to only get stronger until we reach D-Day, as I like to call it, June 30th. That's the day that Egyptians have selected as the day that Egyptians are going to rise against Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Looking at it further, if you take the 15 million people who signed the Rebel Campaign petition, consider it as a percentage of the 21.7 million voters who voted in the first round of Egyptian elections. That's approximately 69% of voters who went to vote in the first round of elections. If that isn't scaring Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood as June 30th approaches, I don't know what will. But even if that's not the case, even if those 15 million people don't go out to vote, it's still quite a significant number. Even if only 10 million, or even if only 5 million of them go out to vote in the next elections, or if there was an election held tomorrow, then it would still turn the tide in terms of who wins the election. And to show you this, I want to remind you of the small margin by which Morsi won in the runoff election, which was held approximately a week later, to Shafiq's, or presidential candidate Ahmed Shafiq, who was the last prime minister under Mubarak's time. So Morsi won by a margin of 51.73%, while Shafiq only won by 48.27%. Even if only 5 million of the 15 million people who signed the rebel campaign go out to vote, it will still make a difference as to who wins the next elections. We'll take a short break and we'll come back. Welcome back to the Rizk Assessment. We were discussing earlier the importance of the 15 million signatures that the rebel campaign has been able to collect against Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood. Another point that's important to discuss is the number of voters in countries abroad. There are a number of Egyptians living in countries abroad that are eligible to vote, and for some reason they register and they don't go. This number could actually turn the tide in any future elections. And we urge and encourage any Egyptians living abroad to go out and vote in any upcoming presidential or parliamentary elections. But taking aside the point of elections per se, the big day that we want to talk about today is June 30th, 2013. It'll be the 1-year anniversary since President Mohamed Morsi took office, and in the past year we have seen quite a number of examples of incompetency as well as corruption that has led Egypt into a very dark area, a very dark age rather, and it has put the country in serious harm's way, or serious harm, since President Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood took office. Some of these examples, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of them, but some of the examples that I want to point your attention to are the Ethiopian dam that's been put up on the Blue Nile. It's threatening to limit or seriously decrease Egypt's water supply through the Nile, which has for centuries provided Egypt with a source of water. There's also the systematic killing of protesters in the streets. If there's been one thing that any president should never allow since the revolution, it's the killing of protesters. And we've seen evidence that shows that President Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood in particular are taking aim at young protesters who are trying to protest against the regime. They're trying to voice their opinion, and the Muslim Brotherhood and its leadership are going out after these youth and killing them in cold blood, sometimes even on the very streets in which people protested in to bring the Muslim Brotherhood. So June 30th becomes a major day in Egyptian history. It will mark the first anniversary of, or the first milestone as to what the Egyptian revolution should have accomplished. Anyone in Egypt, especially those 15 million people who have signed the rebel campaign, know that there's something wrong with Egypt because of the leadership that's currently controlling it. And Egyptians in Egypt and across the world will be taking to the streets to protest this, this system of government that has taken Egypt into a very dark and serious time. I want to encourage you to, wherever you are, in whatever city, in whatever part of the world, to go out and to join the protests that Egyptians will likely be holding in your city. In Canada, we know so far that there will be protests in Calgary, in Toronto. There's one being planned in the capital city of Ottawa as well. And we also know that in the United States, there's a major protest being planned in Washington, D.C. And we were just informed that there's also a protest being planned in London, in the United Kingdom. But I'm sure there's also many other cities from around the world who will be joining Egyptians on June 30th to protest President Mohamed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood. And we know from the 15 million signatures that we've seen in the rebel campaign that this is a very serious number for the Muslim Brotherhood. And they're going to be trying to push back as much as possible to prevent the momentum that the rebel campaign has put together. And when I say push back, this is a very serious allegation, because this is going to mean that the Muslim Brotherhood are going to come out swinging. They're going to come out on the streets on June 30th looking to quell any protests that are against Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood. But we have to remember that in the long run, this is for the benefit of Egypt. We have to remember that always the most difficult stage of any revolution is going to be the first hours, the first day even. If we remember anything from January 25th, we remember the fear that gripped many people on the first day of the revolution. But once the fear of the first day was broken, then history was made. On June 30th, we are positive that the same history, that the same fear will be broken, and that within no time, the Muslim Brotherhood will be brought down from power. And who knows what comes after that. But we certainly know that the Muslim Brotherhood will not be seeing another day in power after June 30th. That's all we have for today. Thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see you next time on the Rizk Assessment.